course.
Grab that. Man, electronic. You step out here. Boss, take that. Oh, we got
Yeah, so I do like live streams. People call and be like, oh, he's a gun or something, you know.
Dude, what? Oh, fuck. Hold on, my fucking... Jesus fucking Christ. Oh god, a shotgun. He just cocked a shotgun.
Yo, what are you doing, bro?
Yo, dude, what the fuck are you doing, dog? Are you, what the fuck?
Put yourself on top of the car, Tony. Just leave it on the car. You don't need to stand it up. Lay it on the car.
Hey you, welcome back to another video. Fancy seeing you here. If you made it through that long ass intro, I'm gonna assume you're probably thinking, what on earth and how did that man end up in such situations? What did he do wrong? Well, like nothing really. I mean, it's complicated, so take a seat, grab a snack, this might get long. Today, we're going to be talking about another chap who was integral to live streaming, still is integral to live streaming, and is often seen as the person who really popularised the whole IRL or in real life streaming, and he is called Ice Poseidon. His story fascinates me, and it does lead us down a whole rabbit hole of Twitch streamers that paid the price of fame, or for fame, depending on who you talk about. It's a wild one for sure though. Ice Poseidon is possibly one of the biggest live streamers on Twitch, or at least he was at one point before he got banned, but we will get there. To understand and appreciate the story fully, we're going to have to talk about a few things before we get to the whole threats towards airlines and armed cops with shotguns things, but we will get there. So first of all, we should talk about our protagonist, Mr. Ice Poseidon. The man behind the myth. So, believe it or not, Ice Poseidon isn't his real name. Shocker! Paul Denino is his real name, and he liked life in Palm Springs, Florida, where he grew up. By all accounts, he had a good childhood, his folks took care of him, they both had decent jobs, he had a decent house. As a young teen, however, he was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome. He does later lament in an interview, he feels that helped him to be a better streamer, as he would often do things that most people would feel like embarrassed about and not be fazed one bit. And this reflected in his content because, yeah, he would do all kinds of stuff that most people would probably only dream about doing. But as a young teen, he was also bullied a little bit, and that caused him to have a strong dislike to school, and he did say that he struggled to make friends in like his early teen years. But yeah, other than that, like everything did seem to be kind of okay for him. The pseudonym Ice Poseidon is a very interesting name, as Poseidon in Greek mythology is the god of the sea, water, earthquakes, and even horses. He's the dude that is often depicted with a trident in his hand. I'm sure you recognise the picture. So, Ice, to start this name off, is a cool little addition. I can totally see a film with this name, to be quite fair. Surprisingly, however, the name Ice Poseidon actually comes from a random name generator on the game RuneScape. Another one of those popular, massive multiplayer online role-playing games, and it's actually one of the originals from about 2000 and is still played today. Ice started playing the game at around age 12 and is a gamer at heart. It would actually be his gameplay from RuneScape over on YouTube that would explode and cause his first exposure to the limelight, and this was when he was about 20 years young. But likely seeing the rise in popularity of live streaming gameplay on Twitch, he thought it was a wise move to make the jump to live streaming his gameplay on Twitch, and this was in 2015 when Ice was about 21. Back then, in real life streaming was just about becoming a thing, but Twitch was very much still a gaming platform, and you would literally be banned for streaming anything other than gameplay, so IRL streams were very much outside of Twitch, like if at all at this point. So he did stick to gaming, and he would see moderate growth and still gain a respectable and dedicated following who just like really liked him, but he was nowhere near where he would be in just a couple of years from now. But I mean, it all worked well for him to start with, that is for sure.
Let me move the mic away. We're gonna fix this before we really get started, alright? I wanna make sure the sound quality is good as fuck. Let me update you, Stoy. Thank you very much. You have a big fucking thank you, dude. Your girlfriend and everything. Stoy. There you go, my friend. That's wrong. Like this. Alright, so let's see. Mic boost. Let me fix this real quick. I want to play some music. Guys, let me know. Right up against it. Alright, hold on. Let me, just want to make sure I get this right. How do we sound right now? How do we sound right now? You guys need to tell me the truth, because if my shit's all fucked up and I look back on my past broadcasts, I'm gonna be pissed the fuck off. Brungus, I'm gonna trust you.
I don't think anybody though could have anticipated just how far he would take all of this, and just how much he would evolve and use creativity to get round and bend certain rules of Twitch. Something that the platform Twitch has become infamous for in the recent years. As of writing this, even in the recent months, there's been a huge debate about the hot tub meta, but yeah, Ice kept pushing and more people were beginning to tune in. Part 2. The birth of the legend.
Ready for this?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh shit!
Oh!
Move! Oh my god, I just don't want this shit in my motherfucking ass. Oh, move, get out of the way! I just don't want to, oh my god, my computer! Oh! Okay. It's over!
So, after a couple years of steady growth playing RuneScape, we find ourselves in 2017. It's not been long, but a lot has changed online. Most notably, the amount of people on Twitch as a whole, hitting a staggering 100 million active monthly users, and the rise of IRL, or in real life, streaming is on the rise. It was when Ice Poseidon started to stream his daily life in LA after he moved there to pursue Twitch as a full-time career, he would blow up, as they say, and this spelled the monumental rise to his fame and popularity. The birth of IRL streaming is a strange one, because it actually took a certain game with very different mechanics to the conventional game to really show how much of a market there was for such content. The game was Pokemon Go. In case you missed it, Pokemon Go is a bit different to any other mobile game because the way that you interact and play the game is by being outside in the real world searching for Pokemon, thus creating somewhat of a loophole where streamers could go outside walking and they could be chatting to people in real life, to their fans, chilling, all while playing a game, therefore not breaking any rules on Twitch. This was what really kicked off IRL streaming on Twitch.
I love you, bro. Alright, dude. Car full of people eating ice cream. Where do I go now, dude? There ain't nothing around here. Look at it. There ain't nothing around here, bro. There's some leaves over there. Maybe there's a Pokemon over there. Hold on. Bro. Damn. What got in my life?
As well as another subcategory known as social eating, where Ice Poseidon would basically walk around with a burger in his hand for an hour just to get round the rules. It was fairly inventive and people loved him for it. Then in 2016, Twitch opened a dedicated section for IRL streaming, and Ice was able to just chill and chat, and this is where he really did start to take off. he was a very approachable guy, but this didn't always work in his favour. Oftentimes people would stream snipe him. Now, if you have no idea what that is, I didn't either. It's basically though where you figure out where somebody is by watching their live stream and going to that place to interact with said person live whilst on stream. It's usually to gain exposure. Ice had an open door policy at his LA apartment since he'd moved there, so it wasn't actually as egregious as it may sound. I mean, he pretty much encouraged people to do it, and this is where we see people like Arabandi, and he calls himself that, by the way, that's not me, he calls himself that, and also Mexican Andy, same deal, he calls himself that, as well as, oddly enough, a load more variations of Andy's, as well as the people that he went on to start a small collective of streamers called the CX Network. This was like one of the first sort of ever kind of group of streamers where the idea would be to focus on collaborations in an effort to further each other's social media platforms. A successful endeavour at the time, but has since been discontinued in that particular sense. But you know, we see like YouTuber houses, TikTok houses, these things are quite common nowadays, but you know, they were doing it way back in 2017 sort of thing, so that's pretty cool. But the most notable thing to come from this, what I can gather, is this big road trip that the gang went on together. It was such a drama fest, it is unreal. I'm probably going to go into this a bit deeper in a future episode, as it's merely a blip on the path for Ice, but for some who were there on the trip, it was literally the start of their career and a seminal point on their path. I think about 15 of them went on this trip, and most were, you know, trying to do the whole social media thing, and some have been successful still to stream into this day, and others not so much. But for the majority, like most of the people that went on that sort of RV trip, the infamous or famous RV trip that it's now sort of remembered as, have pretty much gone on to be famous because of that trip. So yeah, but anyway, after this trip, Ice did go back to his extraordinary, ordinary life, streaming. Like many creators do, Ice absolutely adored his community, and he thought that he really had his best interests at heart. I mean, as you would do, right? Due to his IRL streaming, he was very outspoken about some personal stuff, and you know, it was part of the charm. But when thousands of people all know your deepest thoughts and feelings, the chance of like just one person using that info against you is sadly very high. But how could the very people that made you famous not have your best interests at heart? It seems like a logical fallacy, so I think he can be forgiven for not seeing it sooner. But did they really want him to suffer? This is a question that Ice was sadly facing, and it had a way too bitter truth, and the cut was likely a deep one. When he realised that his community was actually toxic and built on the foundations of schadenfreude and spite, plenty of damage had already been done. But where did it all go wrong? Part 3. Toxic Waste. So, I guess looking back retrospectively, the signs were there. Twitch used to, and still might, utilise a text-to-speech system where a viewer can donate a certain amount set by the streamer to have their message in chat read out loud, usually by a loudspeaker in like the whole robot voice. The issue being, people could say whatever they wanted. Moderation has come a long way since then, and we can now better look after the chat and stop abusive messages from ever being seen. But back then, there was no such thing, at least in the way that it is today. This resulted in Ice getting a couple of bans from Twitch, as he was unable to filter every bad comment with his popularity increasing so exponentially. The first ban was for 24 hours and because of racist messages in the chat, but that didn't actually seem to bother him too much, but he would learn from here to be a little bit more jubilant. Still, however, a couple months later, he did receive yet another ban for exactly the same thing, but this time it was for a week. Some of his so-called fans thought that this was entertaining, something that Ice was struggling to accept. For this ban, he was extremely unhappy, as this racist message was sent and he wasn't even near the phone or camera. He'd basically lost a bet with his chat and he jumped into a swimming pool, and it was during the time in the swimming pool that the message was sent. So Ice felt that this ban was rather unjust, saying in a Twitter post that he might not actually return to streaming after the ban was up. And I do think at this point, he was starting to realise that getting banned was actually entertaining to his viewers and they wanted to see that. Obviously a very toxic and unsustainable relationship, but nonetheless, he continued on with streaming despite the warnings that led to his 45-day ban that multiplied the feelings from the last ban by like 1,000. But showing his resilience, he still continued on. So by this point in the story, we are nearing the start of 2017, and sometime during the last year or so, Ice had realised that his chat basically wanted to see him suffer, and he actually doubled down on that idea. So rather than trying to actually stop it, he decided to encourage it and keep up the channel growth, I guess. And in that sense, like, it really worked. He did things like streaming asleep, and his viewers could donate for various things to happen to him in the middle of the night, like being shot with a paintball gun, or you having like a loudspeaker blasted in his ear. And this is how he basically made mainstream news by the video called How I Made $5,000 While Sleeping. It was a pretty big deal at the time, but I mean, you know, it was clear that people was there to see him suffer, and although he did capitalise on it, it didn't really turn out well. What it did do is strengthen the already unsustainable and now downright dangerous dynamic. He was likely advised to keep this sort of thing up and ramp it up if he had a manager, and I'm sure he would have at that point, because he was making a lot of money, and more importantly, making Twitch a lot of money. It was also because of this dynamic that swatting became a big thing and also got thrown into like public consciousness. And if you don't know, and if you did miss this like myself, swatting is the act of calling law enforcement, or basically falsely reporting a crime at the streamer's location, or, you know, using the streamer's name. The obvious intention is to see somebody like get, you know, grabbed by the police on stream live, and basically scare the living daylights out of them, usually with the officers entering with guns drawn because of like the nature of the calls. And this has happened to Ice many times. And all this eventually culminated in a bomb threat being called into an airport that Ice was getting a plane from, I think, causing him to effectively be arrested and escorted off the plane by armed guards. One guy must have just like hated Ice because he was responsible for a fair few of the swatting allegations, apparently, calling in multiple bomb threats and other really worrying things. But due to his location, even the FBI couldn't actually do anything about it when Ice eventually had enough and tried to get help. Sadly, swatting is a huge part of Ice's story, as he was swatted over 40 times at least, and the plane was obviously one of the worst ones, and ultimately that was the one that made Twitch say enough is enough, and that was when Ice received a permanent ban from Twitch. This, of course, must have been simply soul-crushing, but somewhat foreseeable, or at least not surprising to him given his track record with bans on the platform. But at this point, he was a bona fide e-celeb, and he had a very large audience that were there to totally watch him on any platform. People who didn't want to see him banned and getting arrested. So maybe the end to his Twitch career was actually the best avenue to take, almost forcing him to take a long hard look at himself and his community, and I guess also what he really wanted from streaming, as well as what he could realistically offer on a consistent basis. So like many people have done when shunned by their respective platforms or find themselves displaced with a following, he came to YouTube. Like any good soulless platform driven by monetary gains and financial incentive, YouTube welcomed Ice and his community with open arms, but this time he did actually only bring the good people with him, and it was clear that from the ban off Twitch that he had really changed his perspective on like streaming in general, and it had really woke him up to how awful his community was and the insane lengths he was having to go to just to keep the lights on. I mean, the truth is, he's a really good streamer. He's entertaining enough without having to resort to shock value and paying money, so he didn't need to do that kind of stuff to make a living. I mean, sure, the numbers were great in the short term, but in the long run, he was never going to be able to keep it up. So now Ice is slightly smaller, although still absolutely huge in regards to being an online streamer, with an audience that do genuinely love him, and is producing the content that he enjoys. He's likely one of the most well-known IRL streamers to ever do it, and he probably always will be. He is absolutely essential to the story and progression of IRL streaming, so he will be forever immortalised in the history books. Ice still streams regularly on YouTube as of writing this, and is still a prominent figure in the online world at large, more so in the realm of online streaming. Ice Poseidon's career online is far from a clean one, but at least he acknowledges this and has tried to do better as a result of making mistakes. He has put years into building his social media platforms and has clearly put a great deal of effort into it, pioneering a whole genre of content into the 2020s and serving as the face of IRL streaming, inspiring thousands like myself to take the leap of faith and dare to dream. Part 4. Conclusion. So, to wrap this little story up, I will end by saying thank you. I mean, if you made it all the way through, then thank you. This has been a really fun project to research, but have had to leave loads out just to keep it short and sweet, and let's be honest, my computer can't take any longer than what it's already doing. But I will leave some links in the description if you would like to learn a bit more, because there is a lot that we have glossed over that could easily have its own episode. He is by no means perfect, and he has done a lot of things that I totally don't agree with, a lot of things that, again, we have glossed over, but I don't think he has done anything that is beyond redemption, and he has tried to embrace the path and given his all to streaming. He pushed it further than anyone else at the time and became the quintessential live streamer, often at the peril at his own health. So, I hope this has been interesting to watch. Please feel free to leave a comment, like, or subscribe. I mean, all three if you're really feeling generous. But really though, it does help the channel loads, and it lets YouTube know that we're here. So thank you for taking the time to watch. Let me just leave you with this. What words compel a people to unite and overthrow the oppressor, to repel the aggressor, to rescue the destitute? They are words that stir our inner being, convict our souls, and move our spirits. They are neither accidental nor random. They are honoured and tempered in the fires of human adversity and experience. Randy Harvey, Public Speaking 101.